Welcome to the Sustain, Change and Grow podcast, where we discuss questions related to climate change and sustainable personal development with experts across different fields. I'm Dilara Salahova. I am currently working at the European Central Bank on sustainable finance topics, and I would like to emphasize that this podcast is not related to my work at the ECB. Instead, it is a part of my desire and effort to raise awareness about the importance of individual actions to address current environmental issues and to bring desired changes into one's life. In this episode, I'm happy to welcome Moritz Morgenroth, a software engineer and an entrepreneur. Moritz is a founder and a co-founder of several startups, including the latest startup 2.0 that attracted my attention. So 2.0 app, as I see it, aims to help people to adopt new sustainable habits. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing and discussing how new technology can help to become more sustainable. Moritz, a very warm welcome to the Sustain, Change and Grow podcast. And let's start our super interesting discussion.
Thanks for welcoming me. I'm glad to join you here. Very nice.
And so you have founded really several startups, and we will get to that later. But let's start with your recent baby, 2.0. And can you tell me more about this and about how you came up with the idea?
Of course. So why the whole story of 2.0 is actually, it starts quite a while back. So it originated from a product that we actually built in my first software agency. The thing that it involved into, which is 2.0, is actually a startup that is focusing on enabling people to make environmental choices in their day-to-day or in their lifestyle. And to tell you a bit about the background of it, so we believe that in order to tackle climate change or in order to build and implement a sustainable lifestyle, everybody in the near future will have to make changes and adjustments to their lifestyle. So this whole crisis, this impending crisis will not be just solvable through technology and through some systemic changes, but it will require all of us to make some adjustments and to actually reduce in a lot of places in our life. And the thought or the core message of 2.0 is that making these changes in your lifestyle can actually be very interesting and fun and motivating. And our mission at 2.0 is to give the people the digital tools and the information, as well as some playful touch points to the topics that makes making these changes and making these reductions in your everyday life a proactive and fun and interesting experience that does not feel like having to lose something or having to actually reduce, but that makes it feel more like an engaging and winning experience in a certain sense.
Yeah, well, this is super useful indeed, because people are usually quite reluctant to embrace any changes. And so these changes, I guess, in particular, because they're related so much to the culture and traditions, how we eat, where we spend vacations, etc. So I think this playful and fun part is really great.
If I may add to this, so just to talk about inspiration a bit, or this change of perspective. So if we look at the younger generation now, so if I look at the generation of my sister, whose whole circle, her whole environment is really engaged in this, and this is kind of the movements around Fridays for Future, the movements that are actually raising their voices and putting awareness. And for them and their generation, I feel like this topic is actually a hobby. This is something that it's an interest. It's something that they are engaging in, not because they feel like they have to. Of course, there's a certain responsibility driving this as well. But for them, it is something that they tackle with such a positive spirit. And I think this this energy, this perspective that you have to, or that they have actually grown into, let's call it that, is something that a lot of the older parts of the population, or the population as a whole, is in a lot of places lacking. And I think that this is something that you can communicate, and this is not something that you are missing intrinsically, but that this is something that you can learn if you get, if your attention gets drawn to these topics from the right angle, from the right direction. So this is also maybe a different way to explain a little bit what we're trying to achieve with our app, with our software.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the young generation, I think they're forming a completely different culture, right? Very different attitude to the nature, to their behavior. It's not only about themselves, it's also about the environment. While us and even stronger, the elder generation, they are coming from a completely different setup and different values. So the nature was always there. It was not something that we were supposed really to take care of. And so like really moving in, how to say, connecting with these values and bringing it quite high in our own everyday life, so that it motivates us to take actions, and also sometimes limit us. That's very important. There are different ways how we can tackle it, right? So some regulation, right? So the government can impose, but the fact that it can be fun. And I think that's it's a different way to come to the same problem, and it's a very interesting approach and very needed. And I wanted to ask you, is there really like scientific background behind the actions that you suggest in your app for users to embrace? How do you do like this the background work of the actions that should be fun for people to take, but also have a significant impact for the environment?
So yes is the short answer. We have scientific partners from different institutions that we work with and that are supporting us in actually modeling the CO2 impact of different challenges. We are quite lucky to be as Twigbit in a government funded Förderprojekt. So this is like a state funded research project where we have partners like the Fraunhofer Institute, as well as the University of Kassel, and they are supporting us with their scientific expertise in the research and the modeling of the, let's call it, of the system behind the challenges. And so the backbone of it all is actually the CO2 calculation model that we use to model each user's individual footprint, which is very detailed, and you can take it to a very detailed level. And the model that we worked on implementing together with the Fraunhofer goes into so many details of your personal life and of the way that you spend or that you emit CO2. And it's scientific research based on the latest papers. We actually, in the Förderprojekt, so in the government-funded project, even had a master thesis just focusing on this, that we were actually also able to work into our product. And above this layer of the scientific approach, we have the University of Kassel, who are also supporting us in terms of their behavioral change expertise. So it's and more in a direction of sociology and analyzing the way that people behave both as a group and individuals, and the whole topic of gamification, because what we have as the scientific backbone, meaning the calculation model and challenges and lifestyle changes connected to the impact that they would actually produce. And on top of that, we need a layer of actual gamification, because we're not trying to build a tool that is highly detailed, that is just a scientific tool, but our product actually lives from being accessible and engaging, and you need to have this layer of gamification, of this layer of challenge around it that does give you the scientific results as, let's call it, well-prepared little not necessarily little, but well-prepared, well-dosed pieces of information that you can consume and that you can actually put into your everyday life. And these are the big two components, I would say. And yeah, we're quite lucky to work with these scientific institutions and have their support, as well as support them with the implementation process. So it's an exciting process.
Indeed, as I can hear it. And so just to sum up, you have really three, I think, very important layers. So one is the scientific evidence of how individual actions can bring impact for the climate change. The second one is really gamification, how it can be fun. And the third one, I think it's also super important, the behavioral and psychological aspects of how people can embrace the changes. I think that's really a great approach to combine all these three spheres. And do you have any insights on this last bit, the psychological and behavioral aspects of the change? Anything that you learned learned for yourself? What are the important elements of this?
So the key takeaway that I have concerning this part of it is that it's a lot more complex than we anticipated. So people make choices in their everyday life, consumption choices, but also develop interests on very complex or on the basis of very complex factors. And trying to, in our product, find an approach that kind of fits everyone. So that is a solution that engages people from different economic points, but also from different age perspectives. So as I mentioned, there are, depending on which age group you belong to, or which kind of environment you are actually in, the way that you need to get in contact with these sustainability topics can actually be fundamentally different. And the amount of information that you already bring to the table, the amount of interest and the amount of knowledge you already bring can be very different. And these are very important factors playing into how you will actually perceive this information. And this is our key mission, to have you perceive it from a good perspective, from a positive angle. And so what we are working in there is to really use this gamification part as the, let's call it, as a basis for this playful engagement. And then the second part is that we are trying to embed the initiatives that we have in let's call it a local or regional context. And this is also a key part of our product, is that we are challenging people to join our product, our initiative, in the scope of their work environment or of their regional environment and their school environment. So our product currently encourages both cities, communities, and regions in Germany, as well as companies and also companies to collaborate with us and to start initiatives such as the Climathon, which is we call it the icebreaker initiative, to actually get in touch with this topic, to engage for a certain time period in a challenge format. And there you have curated content over the weeks, and you have a leaderboard-based system where you are building teams, and within these teams trying to reduce your emissions together. And this is for us a mechanism to also be able to create content that is completely, let's call it, optimized for the target group that you're in. So we could create custom content for a school environment where most of the participants are already in some way aware of the topic. At the same time, we could also create optimized content for groups where we have a much older target group, and we need to set a lot more, let's call it, base informations, and we can spend more attention on the detailed CO2 calculation topics, because they have more information there, or they might even have a more scientific or more factual perception of the issue. And this is our current way of actually dealing with this and being able to customize a bit for different target groups. And it's also, let's say, ongoing investigation. So we're just starting to experience all this, and also starting to collect some data on how people are, depending on which factors people are actually returning into our product, and on which basis they're actually reducing or changing their behavior for the long run. And the University of Kassel is also currently in our collaboration writing a paper on this with scientific research, and they're experiencing with different nudges. So it's really we're really not at the point that we have the ultimate answer, but where we're starting to step by step optimize the process, our app, to get in touch with everyone. And that is also quite the exciting process, to continuously learn from feedback and data.
Yeah, I really love your approach, this backed by the scientific research, so that you learn from the process, you learn how people work with the application, how they change behavior, and you can feed in the results and improve the application or your product. I think that's really super interesting. And so if I understand correctly from what you said, your target audience is really like your game approach is really a group challenge. So though everyone can download the app probably for free individually, but it's probably, and I think it makes a lot of sense, it's much more difficult to change your behavior on your own rather than being in a group and having the challenge. So your approach is really to target a group of people, company, school, or region, and to engage people in this challenging behavior. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, so maybe to explain a bit, I didn't go into the details of the product yet. Maybe it's good to explain a little bit. So our core app, the app 2.0 that we have in the stores, is as of itself, you can use it in your private life as an individual. So there's no need to have this community to it. And there's also gamification aspects woven into the core application, in the sense that we have affiliate partnerships with sustainable companies that you can, by using the app, unlock, for example, coupon codes for these companies and win some prizes. So this is a mechanism of actually motivating people to stay on the topic with sustainable prizes. And we're currently also working on a virtual equivalent to this, so to also have some virtual prizes. So there's a lot of gamification science in there, but that you can start earning some tokens, some information pieces in the app that will actually be a playful counterpart to this real life analog advantage that you can get from using the application. So this is what's already built in there and what can be used completely independently of which context or which type of user you are. And then there's this second perspective for embedding this into, let's call it a regional context. And this is currently also our core product, is that we're collaborating with institutions, regions, and companies to motivate them to join or to build a community for their participants, employees, for example, in our app. And in this change of perspective, the app starts becoming a platform because users belonging to one of these communities, for example, if your employer is to start a initiative, a community on our platform, they have the options to publish their own information, to publish their own sustainability challenges that are related to your work, and equally they are also able to provide their own rewards and provide their own partnerships. And this is a really important aspect of the product, because we believe that from a certain level on, climate protection or reducing emissions becomes intrinsically a local or a regional issue, because in order to be able to successfully manage a challenge, there are certain needs in terms of infrastructure, there are certain local needs in terms of industry, in terms of having a market where you can actually get fresh, unpacked vegetables that are required to efficiently perform these challenges. And most of the time, these things actually already exist. People are just not very aware of them. So it's also, in a lot of cases, important to give the answer to the question that the challenge is actually asking. And if you have this mechanism inside the app for people to include their own partnerships, include their own local information, and let me mention again that local doesn't mean local only in a geographical sense, but local in a community sense. This can also be a work environment. And just to give you a more concrete example, if you have a challenge that tells you to bike to work for a week, this challenge comes with some implications, because if you actually try it out, you might notice that the road to your workplace does not have a biking lane. So you might start asking the question, what can we do to get a biking lane there? What can we do to make our city, our environment more bike friendly? At the same time, once you arrive at work, you might be saying, okay, wow, our places to lock our bikes in front of our office are completely crowded and it's very unpractical. Why don't we start asking our our employer for a more friendly solution there, so that we can implement our behavioral change with you as a region or with you as an employer in a collaboration, as a collaborational effort. And by the way, we're also working for features around that in our app. So this will be launched probably soon, to be actually able to start raising your voice towards certain issues, communal or at the workplace, with related to sustainability through the app, and to start some petitions to draw attention to places where it's hard to implement a sustainable behavior. This is the big idea behind this community aspect. And what we find actually working and implementing these initiatives with different companies, with different regions, is that the process of just discussing and implementing the initiative already brings out so much content, so much information, so many places where a community or a company starts reflecting on themselves and their own behavior. And just the process is already so beneficial. And when you then start bringing in the people with their own ideas and challenging them to actually get in touch with these topics by doing the challenges, you get this, what we would call this productive friction, this discussion, this engagement around the topics that actually is a driver for behavioral change. So that is actually provable or visible, something that causes people to change their behavior, and they are not feeling like they are actually losing something or something like their car is being taken away from them when they choose to use their bike, but they're actually starting to have fun with it, enjoy it, and they're surprised how exciting this process is. And this is exactly what we're going for. And this is exactly where the community or the people around you and the environment around you are a very important factor in this behavior change.
Sounds like an impressive work, and even a more impressive plan of what you plan to achieve. Really, really great. And do you know already who are your users? I know the app is very young. I think it's only about 6 months, right? So, but has it? You probably certainly trace, right? So how many users you have? You may already have engaged with certain companies or regions, but also end users. So can you maybe share some success stories and where you are now?
Yes, so just to give a bit of context, the application has actually been around for quite some time longer. So the app that has now evolved into becoming our To0 app is originally an app that we released, I think, more than 3 years ago as a CO2 calculator. And this was very plain. We then partnered up with a startup called the World Watchers, and we continued building this app into something that contains more content and more challenges, so informations. And this has been a very long process, iterative process. And we used this app, this product that we developed with the World Watchers as our starting point for To0. And now evolved and rebranded this whole application, but we already had quite a bit of user experience or a lot of experience with our users and some numbers concerning the overall usage of the application. In terms of data, so just to be clear, we are not a data business in that sense. We have some mechanisms of course, tracking user activity, once on a completely anonymous level. So just to get an overall impression of how many people are using our app and how long they are engaging. And then if you agree to contribute your data to the improvement of the application, which is completely optional, we also start tracking some more detailed behavioral data, such as how many challenges you do on a weekly basis, what kind of challenges are actually, or you're likely to succeed in. But we don't have any data business on top of your personal footprint data or your interests. So this is just for understanding this scientific component to your behavior, and to actually improve the app experience to give you the right challenges, the right content. In terms of numbers from the app, we can share that we have currently a really, really good performance with regard to the initial touch points to the app. So out of the users that actually onboard to our product, a very, very high percentage actually starts engaging and using. So they consume the content, they start reading, they have session times, which are very impressive, also having developed and published other applications to the app stores and having numbers to compare to. The amount of time that users are usually spending in our application the first week is impressive. And this also shows to us that the interest and the content is well adjusted and engaging, so that people are not just installing it to get to be part of the movement, but they're actually consuming the content, consuming the challenges. The core challenge of our app currently, as well as probably or as well as most apps on the store, is to keep people engaged for the long run. So to actually place different triggers across your experience in using the app, to use gamification as well as push notifications and rewards to make the topic interesting in the long run. And there, I would also not say that our numbers are bad there, but this is where you naturally have the biggest space for improvement. And being able to continuously provide this platform to the people where they, in their daily lives, that they interact with, that they track on, that they input information and get valuable feedback to change their behavior, where they also communicate with their community, with their employer, and get informations to really turn our app into a long-term platform solution that you need and want to use to implement your sustainable lifestyle, is what we're most working on, also in a numeric sense, so also in terms of improving the numbers.
Yeah. Would you be able to assess the positive impact of people using the app? Like how much CO2 they have reduced by changing their habits or something like this?
Yes, so we do have these numbers and we do calculate these numbers. We tend to communicate them as estimates, of course, because the actual efficient saving of CO2 that you can achieve with our application is not always direct, because we communicate that most of the impact that you achieve by using our application is indirect, in the sense that it is the long-term behavioral change as well as the reflection on different other areas of your life where the impact is actually hidden. But with our scientific partners, we do calculate numbers for all of our challenges, for all of our behavioral changes that represent the efficient or the effective CO2 saving that you achieve compared to your current footprint, to your current lifestyle. And we have the raw numbers in terms of emission savings. We also have a gamified system that we call climate coins currently, that is an estimate on the challenges effort, or that is a reward based on the challenges effort, either in terms of the time you have to invest in something or the time of financial monetary investment that you sometimes have to make. And this is also a measure in terms of impact, because so I didn't paint the whole picture there. There's three components going into our virtual climate coins. The first one is the time you spend on a challenge. The second one is the monetary or otherwise effort that you have to make to actually implement something, because sometimes in making a behavior or making a change also means investing in something, investing in a new bicycle, having to make a monetary investment. And there's also a whole tier there of making renovations in your home that allow for a long-term, more sustainable lifestyle. And the third component is, of course, the direct impact of a challenge. So if you decide to change your mode of transport for a certain time, then you have a direct impact completely independent of these other two factors, and that is also measured. And we combine these three factors into the climate coins. And with the climate coin system, we also have a way of motivating you to do challenges that don't have a direct impact. So in a lot of cases, attending an event, reading informational content, researching, posting, these are things that also can have an impact, but it doesn't tend to be direct. For example, if you go to a demonstration, you're actually probably going to emit some CO2 getting there, right? But the effect should also be measured and rewarded in the application. Yes, in terms of actual numbers, I don't have anything explicit that I can share with you, because our estimates tend to be quite defensive in the sense that we look at what really was saved directly in terms of emissions, and also what was rewarded in terms of coins. But I wouldn't put this into the, or I wouldn't communicate this as a focus point, because as I said, the long-term changes that come with that are where the actual impact is caused. So I wouldn't put any numbers on it at this stage.
So are there any regions or companies who have started using your app for their employees or for the people in the region?
Yes, so we do have over 20 active climathons running, so over 20 regions and companies who are collaborating with us. So in terms of who actually is engaging with us, we have to be a little bit careful, because not all of our clients allow us to publicly share their names and references, because they want to be themselves in control over what information or how they share the information from the initiatives that results with their customers, but also with the public. But I can say that there are quite a lot of communities in Germany that we are actively working with, and they are also actively communicating to the outside. I would actually refer to our website here and just give you some examples of some successful climathons that we launched. So we had the Ebersberg community. We are really actively engaging with the northern regions of Germany. So there's the Flensburger region, who is currently running an initiative. Yeah, so there's the Flensburger region, there's the Offenbach, then we have some companies like TE Connectivity, but also the Deutsche Bahn, and some incubators like the Next Incubator, who have joined our initiative. And these are just some examples of bigger companies and regions here in Germany. We're currently restructuring a little bit and trying to also get communities in a bigger sense to unite in this, so to collaborate at a bigger regional scale. And there's some initiatives there that probably will go public quite soon. Usually it's also something, so of course regions who engage in this are usually more prone or more open to communicating this. So we will probably be able to share some news there very soon. And yeah, as mentioned, the overall count is above 20, and we're very actively discussing with new customers, as well as engaging or continuing the initiatives that we usually start off with this Climathon initiative, because we're also getting the continuous feedback that everyone who engages with us for a time-bound initiative for a couple of weeks tend to want to continue or to repeat. So here we're really transforming currently from this from offering an initiative to offering this platform, or for offering a long-term solution. And yes, that is the overall image of who's working with us, or who we are working with.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. Quite an achievement after just 6 months. And now let us move to questions more about you. And I was wondering, so what is your carbon footprint according to the app?
So that is a good question. It's around 12 tons, I have to say.
Okay, so that's more or less like an average across Germany or Europe.
Yes, so it's a little bit above the average. It's always the question. So when I'm asked about my footprint, I tend to name it before compensational efforts, because I feel like compensation is not really the same as reduction. So if you would include compensation into this calculation, then it would be considerably lower. But as mentioned, I feel like if we're honestly being asked about our footprint, we have to understand compensation as an additional measure and not as a equivalent to reduction. Yes.
Yeah. And so what do you mean by compensational measures? Like, what are they?
So investing in in projects that compensate part of your footprint. So the classical example is whenever I fly, whenever I fly, I compensate the impact of the flight using services like Atmosphere. We're actually also engaging there or currently working on features in our app to be able to offer our own projects where we are planning to give options to we don't call it compensate, but to invest in projects that actively take some CO2 out of the atmosphere, or also support certain initiatives that are more across the whole ESG scope. So actually being able to compensate or to reduce certain aspects of your lifestyle very specifically and very scientifically. But this is now a whole new topic. No, I mean by this that I actually, whenever I have some events in my lifestyle that emit a lot of CO2, like a flight, like a vacation, I support climate projects that do take some CO2 out of the atmosphere to compensate for these emissions that I had. And also I try to invest in projects. So I think investment is a really important buzzword when we talk about sustainability as well. And this is also one area of my life where I tend to quite consciously invest and choose in a direction that is sustainable and long-term.
Right. So I imagine you mean some of these measures like tree planting, right? Or is there anything else? Because I think like for an ordinary consumer, tree planting seems to be the easiest way of compensating. Though I'm curious about your views, how really reliable it is, and if it's really a good measure, or if it's more of greenwashing.
So I believe that this is one of the key problems that we currently have in our sustainability situation, and it's also highly political, is that a lot of companies as well as individuals are making efforts to compensate their footprint and to become climate positive. And especially at a company level, this is currently not really treated as a systemic change that needs to be made, but it's more treated as opening your wallet and spending money. And I believe that the compensation projects we currently have around are, in the way that they are standardized and they are tracked, not very scientific. So as mentioned, you have a lot of climate projects where the actual impact of the project is very delayed. And just to use tree planting as an example, there we have the issue that the time that will pass until these projects will actually actively take CO2 out of the atmosphere is a very long one. And I'm not saying that this is always bad, you just have to be aware of it. And from my point of view, it's important to start understanding this compensation world more as an investment world, because if I'm investing either personally or financially in tree planting today, it's an investment that will carry its fruit in let's say 20 years. And that does not mean it's a bad investment, it just means it's an investment with a very, very late return. And at the same time, there are a lot of ecosystems and there are a lot of places that are a lot of mechanisms, for example, ecosystems that can be protected today that will actually then actively continue to take CO2 out of the atmosphere. So if we keep our existing ecosystems intact and actually build upon them or extend them, there's a lot more difference to be made there with a short-term return. And one of the key problems that I see, and it's quite interesting that you're asking this, because we are currently really actively investigating how we can make this part of our product. But the key issue that we currently have is that there is no real transparency to the customer, to the consumer, because if I want to invest in in climate projects, then for me to start reading into the standards, into the certificates that exist, and to get the information is almost impossible because there are so many around, and it does become at some point a very scientific topic. So it requires a very, very high effort. And really being able to separate out the projects out of this whole compensation world, and the market has been growing like crazy, but to separate out the projects that say, okay, this is what I want in my portfolio, this is a project that I want to support, that allows me to really account for my impact short term, is one of the challenges there. And we are really planning to start integrating our own projects, or not our own projects, but to integrate a platform for projects with this visibility. So with this overview and with this model for when and what impact will actually be produced by supporting this project. We are actually planning to make this quite soon a part of our portfolio and a part of our product. Yes.
Yeah, that's really super important. I can even say that it's not only for the ordinary people and customers, which is difficult to decide what is really sustainable, which will have a climate impact. It's also difficult really for institutional investors to identify what is green and what is not. And no, your effort is super useful. And actually, in one of the next episodes, we will discuss with the guest the ESG investing, how people can really understand and identify the projects which are green and which will have environmental benefits. So it's interesting that you are mentioning it. It's super relevant and very important because essentially, to assure the transition and assure that we are prepared for the climate change, we need a lot of investments, and these investments should be channeled in the right projects. But yeah, it's difficult to know what is what right now.
Looking forward to that episode. Know when it comes out.
Sure. And so now we have relatively few minutes left, and let me continue with the questions for you. So do you follow the habits, the sustainable habits that you have in your app? And was it difficult for you to do it? Like, did you really feel the burden of the change that you need to implement it, or was it really more fun for you? You embraced it in a different way?
So honestly, since this engaging with these challenges, creating these challenges, living with the content, interacting with the content for quite some years now, I wouldn't really call it challenges. So I don't really actively participate in challenges on a day-to-day basis so much. We do in the office, so we have our own little office climathon running, and we do sometimes challenge each other. But since we know each other's behavior quite well, it's sometimes a more fun mechanism to actually get out of your box. In terms of my personal life, of course, I have been for quite some time actively thinking about and implementing my own sustainability lifestyle. And there are different points. So I personally am quite, I would call it quite the pragmatic person with respect to these topics. So I tend to really look scientifically at where a difference can be made and where I want to also make this difference. And these are things that I've been now implementing for quite some years in my personal lifestyle. Big one being that of course, you try to reduce all the modes of transport, like flight, wherever you can, that when you need or want to actually fly or go on a vacation, that you actually do use the modes of compensation to at least account for these big emission points. And then at a personal level also to really use all the things that you have at hand in your surrounding that allow you to significantly reduce your emissions and your impact. And these are things like taking care of separating your trash, being sure that you have a green energy provider at all levels, not having your own car, but actually relying on car sharing services that we have quite luckily here in Berlin plenty of, and having these kind of mechanisms and using these kind of mechanisms that are, I would call them low-hanging fruit, and really making them a long-term part of my lifestyle is something that I've engaged with at a non-challenge level. And now we can start talking about this challenge level. So there I tend to do like a playful interaction with the topics that I have difficulty with. So difficulty, I would say, I have with topics around nutrition. I like to cook, and not eating meat, for example, or not consuming meat is something that is more difficult for me. And having grown up in a family where I have two sisters who are actually vegan, this has always been an interesting interaction point. But here is an example of an area of living where I tend to challenge myself. So where I try to actually actively not consume meat, for example, regularly, or where I actively try to get out of my comfort zone. And that is another part of it here. I'm, due to my just personal, let's call it interest, or to my likings, it is a point where I say I don't want to live veganly. I want to sometimes consume meat, as in German we say Genussgut, so as a thing to enjoy, as a thing to really yes, as a thing to
the
enjoy.
Pleasures.
And thanks, that was the word I was looking for, as a pleasure. And this is something that I'm not willing to cut out of my life completely, but I am challenging myself to move my behavior in the right direction, and to more actively perceive whenever I do consume. Yes, just to give an example out of my life.
Great, thanks a lot for sharing. And I have found your personal story very interesting. So the software engineer and active in starting startups. So, and I was wondering, so where does this entrepreneurial spirit come from?
So I would say that I've always had a certain curiosity or a certain energy inside me to actually start things, try things, build things. So this has been, I would say, something like a hobby, really, also from young up. As a young software engineer, especially, you tend to have pet projects all over the place, and you want to build your own app for taking care of this part of your lifestyle, and then you have your own little software project where you try to solve another problem. And this has been something that I personally really enjoy a lot. So taking problems out of everyday life, but also now talking more in the startup world, out of other people's lives, and trying to find creative solutions for them, and not take things as given, but really just playing with the challenges, playing with the situations, is something that I really like to do. And then the second component that comes in is that this becomes so much more exciting when you start sharing it with a team and other people. So when you don't just do this at an individual level, but when you start really having people around you that inspire you, and being able to share this spirit, I guess that's where you become a little bit addicted to this mode of working. And I think once you tasted that, it's, or for me at least, never having been in a classical employed relationship, it's something that I can't imagine working without. And I think even in a classical employee-employer relationship, if you're working in a good team, you also share the spirit. It doesn't always have to mean founding something or starting something of your own, but it's really a mentality. And that is something that I find incredibly enriching for my not just work but personal life. And it also always starts mixing at some level, because Of course, everybody takes their work to a certain extent also personal. And I think I, for one, want to work in an environment and work for things and topics where it automatically becomes personal, because it's I carry it with me. And that does not mean that I have to work super long hours on a weekly basis, but that means that I actually continuously start my workday motivated and that I really want to discover. And yes, once you've built this momentum and once you've found this mode of working, I think it's something that you get a little bit addicted to, and you start making it an integral part of your life and keep sharing it with others.
Yeah. Well, though entrepreneurship is also associated with the uncertainty and also with the constantly changing environment, and like the environment that work in a company. So how do you deal with those? Are you enjoying that part too, or is it something that does take you out of your comfort zone?
So it's honestly, for me, not a big topic. So I tend to consider the financial and the insecurity aspect of the whole thing. I tend to consider the parameters that you kind of have to work with, but not really either the goal or the let's call it condition that you need in order to do something. Because if you just approach a problem and you say, okay, these are the options that I have, these are the parameters, these are the financial parameters that I have to work with, then you just have to make the best out of your situation. And this is something also for me at a personal level. I don't do this to pay myself a big salary, and you tend to work with the preconditions that you have. And as we have grown organically, so far in our process, I have to say we've never worked with big investors or with any big loans. We've always tried to grow organically, get people on board with our ideas, with our thoughts early. We also have this software agency component in our work that we sometimes are able to sell services or consult other companies with our expertise. And in this context, insecurity has never been a big issue, because for me at a personal level, there's no question that this is the way that I want to work and develop. One thing that I have to add to this is that this is also, from my personal perspective, something that is easy to say because the position in my life that I'm in. So I currently don't have any children. I'm able to plan pretty flexibly, and I'm able to kind of, I would say, drive at sight. And this might change some point in the future, also in the near future, where I'm looking for more security. But then again, you can rebuild your company, you can rebuild your process in the way that you create more security. And equally with all my colleagues, with all our employees, we are just very transparent in our communication. So we do, whenever there is insecurity, whenever there are some parameters that we cannot control, may they be financial, may they be somehow regulatory or whatever, then we communicate this with the team really directly, and everybody in our team is aware of the challenges, financial and so on, that we are tackling, and is saying, okay, let's make the best out of this together. And in this, sharing this way of working and this mentality, as well as sharing the information, gives the basis for everybody to know what's at hand, and find their own way of kind of dealing with, let's say, being an entrepreneur or working in a startup. And yes, that's the last thing. I've lost myself a little bit there, but I think you know what I'm going for.
Yeah, no, all good. Thanks a lot. And any pieces of advice for somebody who would like to start a startup? from your experience, maybe to avoid certain mistakes?
So from my point of view, the most important thing is to really be curious and learn this mindset of discovering and constantly being able to shift also your perspective a little bit, because I think in order to build a startup, you have to bring this flexibility. And even though in most talks to investors or external people, they always want to hear that you have one vision, one goal that you're striving for. But I think it's sometimes safer to make this goal a little bit bigger and not too clearly defined, and then say, okay, I'm going to go on this journey, and there's going to be a lot of things that I don't know yet and that I'm going to run into that might need me to reorient my company, my idea, to flexibly go in a different direction. And what really helps you to bear this or to take this challenge on is to keep this mode of curiosity and discovery and getting all the information, because the earlier you get the information that might actually cause you to change direction in a certain way, the more efficiently you can move in this new direction. And I think this is what it needs to build great things, to build great companies, to build great products, is not to have one clearly defined goal, but to really start building a process around this development, to start building a team and a process that allows you to be flexible and creative. And yes.
Yeah. So curiosity, flexibility, teamwork, and creativity. So those are the key words that I learned from your answer. And your two most inspiring books. This is the question that I ask every guest, because I love reading.
Yeah. So I would say first one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It's a great, I think it offers a great different perspective on how the mind actually functions, or how we as people function. And it's also quite interesting because it is, of course, in some aspects related to what we do. So if we talk about behavioral change, there are some touch points there. And this is really something that I think you can take a lot away from in observing yourself and the world around you. And the second one I would say is Homo Deus by Harari, which is, I think, also quite a known one. But this is also I think a great read to leave your comfort zone and let's say try to gain a different perspective of what might be possible shorthand, and also what kind of challenges really come with that, that might need us as a society to grow and to refocus and to dynamically also change the way that we interact. And I think the way that he researched and explains this in this book is really, really fascinating. So I would share this with everyone.
Thank you so much, Moritz, for this very interesting conversation. I think it was very much inspiring to learn from your experience with the 02 startup, but also from your life as an entrepreneur. And would you like to add some concluding remarks?
No, I guess so. The last thing that I would like to say, or that I would like to share, is that I would really love to have everyone join this this initiative, or this overall movement of tackling this shorthand. It used to be a long-term problem. Now I think it's a short-term problem of climate change, and really stop understanding it as a burden or something that is fearful, but start using their creativity in their everyday life, their entrepreneurial creativity, but also their personal creativity to tackle this issue, and in a certain sense have fun with it. And I think the more collaboration we can get there, and the more interaction we can get on these topics, the more realistic it becomes that we can also find a short-term solution solution to this problem. And I'm very sure that we will find a solution to it, because I feel like there is a certain ingenuity in us that allows us to solve problems. And the question is just how and when. And I think now is a good time as any to get started.
Yeah, I can only join and support your call for action and for embracing this. So thank you again, and hope listeners enjoyed this episode, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for your time.